Countless zombies swarmed toward the man, yet he remained calm. All the zombies avoided him and ran past to the rear. In the future world, a zombie crisis has erupted, billions of people have turned into zombies, and even the President of the United States couldn't escape. Humanity's last hope lies on Pete, a UN investigator. At first, everyone thought it was just a riot. That day, Pete was stuck in traffic on a street in Philadelphia, unable to move an inch for a long time. Suddenly, a police motorcycle scraped past his car, knocking off his rearview mirror entirely. Pete had just pushed open the car door to stop the other party and argue. When several more motorcycles rushed past, Pete's heart skipped a beat. He knew all too well, if the police were acting this abnormally, a major disaster must have occurred. Before he could get back into the driver's seat, the office building ahead exploded with a loud bang, and flames mixed with shards of glass fell from above. The police officer behind him shouted at him to get in the car quickly. Pete had just gotten back into the car when a garbage truck from behind suddenly slammed into the police officer, sending him flying. Pete reacted quickly, immediately, starting the car and following the garbage truck to break out of the congested area. At the same time, he turned around and told his daughter in the back seat to fasten her seatbelt. But the child had already been scared stiff by the scene, huddled in the corner of the back seat trembling. Pete was just about to reach out to help his daughter when their car was hit by a vehicle coming from the side. Fortunately, no one was injured, but outside the car, chaos had erupted. There were people running around frantically everywhere, mixed in with a few strange creatures, with black, gnarled fingernails and blood dripping from their mouths. They pounced on people, pinning them to the ground and biting. Clearly, they were a new type of zombie. A man, so scared by the chasing zombies that he was almost wetting his pants, spotted an unlocked car by the roadside, pulled open the door, and jumped in. As soon as he closed the door, the zombies pounced on the car window. Their claws scraped against the glass with a cracking sound, and it didn't take long for them to shatter the glass. Screams came from inside the car. Pete's neck tingled with fear as he watched. He maneuvered through the traffic to move forward, while keeping an eye on the man who had just been bitten. Fortunately, Pete's family found a motorhome that was still functional. Coincidentally, the radio was playing a drama program, which happened to have a time announcement segment. In just 12 seconds, the man convulsed and climbed up from the ground. He had also turned into a zombie. Realizing how fast the infection spread, Pete didn't dare to delay. He stepped hard on the accelerator and rushed forward. A large group of zombies swarmed toward the front of the vehicle. The one at the very front was almost reaching out to grab the car door. Pete's wife quickly grabbed the handrail on the ceiling and kicked the zombie away with one foot. Pete took the opportunity to sharply turn the steering wheel, using the front of the car to push away another pouncing zombie, and finally broke through. By this time, black smoke was rising everywhere in Philadelphia, starting from the city center. The entire city was ruined. They hadn't driven far when the daughter suddenly started coughing violently, her breathing growing more rapid by the second. It turned out she was having an asthma attack. Pete had to stop by the side of the road. To make matters worse, the asthma inhaler had been left in his own car. He could only try to calm her down first. Just then, his phone rang. It was Terry, the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations. Terry said he had just escaped from New York. Now, the zombie crisis was happening worldwide, and almost all major cities were surrounded. He added that a helicopter would be sent to pick up Pete the next morning. But until then, Pete would have to hold on by himself. At this moment, the younger daughter unexpectedly found a shotgun in a cabinet. After hanging up the phone, Pete glanced at his frightened children in the back seat and said they needed to find food and medicine. He took his family to a supermarket. The place was in a mess, shelves were knocked over, and food and drinks were scattered everywhere. Pete split the work with his wife. He told her to take their younger daughter Connie to collect water and bread, while he took their older daughter Rachel to get the asthma medicine. As soon as they reached the pharmacy, they encountered a man with a gun. Fortunately, the man meant no harm, and even helped them find the specific medicine they needed. Just after getting the medicine, Pete heard Connie calling Dad. Pete turned around and saw Connie sitting in an unattended shopping cart, while his wife was nowhere to be seen. Soon, he spotted his wife being pinned to the ground by two men. Pete shouted at them to let his wife go, but one of the men actually pulled out a gun and shot at him. He had just helped his wife up when a policeman rushed in. Pete quickly raised his hands. The policeman ignored him and only focused on stuffing food into a bag. After grabbing what he wanted, he ran outside. Pete's family followed him out of the supermarket, only to find their car gone. It must have been stolen. Pete had to take his family and run to a nearby building. By this time, the streets were already full of zombies. Explosions and the howls of zombies could be heard everywhere, and from time to time, new zombies could be seen rushing out of buildings. As soon as they ran into the building, they quickly locked the door. Immediately after, the sound of zombies slamming into the door echoed behind them, and the door panel was almost broken through. Pete shouted for his family to hurry upstairs. While going upstairs, Rachel saw a half-open door. Inside, a family of 3 who hadn't been infected was hiding. Pete hesitated for a moment, then still took his family inside to hide and catch their breath temporarily. By midnight, Pete told the family to go to the rooftop together to wait for the helicopter, but the family was too scared to move and said they wanted to stay in the room. Pete didn't try to persuade them further. He found a few books, wrapped them around his arms with tape for protection, then tied a kitchen knife to the muzzle of his gun, and took his family to the rooftop. They had just stepped onto the stairs when screams came from behind them. There was no doubt that the family had been found by zombies. Suddenly, several zombies rushed out from the stairwell. Pete told his family to run to the rooftop first while he stayed behind to hold them off. The zombies were fast and strong, and soon they pinned Pete against the wall. Pete managed to push one down the stairs, but another pounced on him, splattering his face with zombie blood. At this moment, Jack appeared behind him and shot the zombie dead. Pete quickly protected Jack and ran toward the rooftop. Just then, his wife threw a flare. The orange-red light was extremely bright, marking their position for the helicopter in the sky. His daughter shouted from the rooftop, telling him to hurry over. Pete protected the young man and ran to the rooftop, then stood at the edge of the platform and started counting down. He was worried that he might have been infected by the zombie blood. Fortunately, no signs of infection appeared. As the helicopter hovered above the rooftop, he quickly turned around and pressed his body against the door at the stairwell entrance to stop the chasing zombies from rushing up. His wife took their 2 children and climbed into the cabin first, while special police officers stood guard at the cabin door with guns in hand. Pete broke free from the zombies behind him and rushed toward the helicopter. A special policeman reached out and pulled him into the cabin. The officers urged the pilot to take off quickly, fearing the zombies would catch up. The family was taken to a UN Maritime Command ship. Deputy Secretary General Terry had long been waiting on the deck, his face showing a solemn expression. After Pete's wife and children were settled in their accommodation, Terry pulled Pete into the command room. He lowered his voice and said the current situation was worse than he had imagined. The president had been infected and turned into a zombie during the evacuation. All command centers on land had been breached, and now this ship was the only one holding the line for the entire operation. Pete's heart sank. Terry went on to say that allowing his family to stay on the ship wasn't without conditions. There was a mission assigned to Pete. Pete had previously been the UN's top investigator, with rich experience from several real combat missions. The general wanted him to take a virus expert to South Korea to find the source of the virus. Obviously, this was an extremely dangerous mission. Pete refused outright, saying he needed to stay with his wife and children. Before Terry could speak, the general pushed open the door and entered. He stated that the command ship had no extra resources to support idlers. If Pete refused the mission, his family would have to be sent back to Philadelphia. Philadelphia was now filled with zombies everywhere. Pete clenched his fists and said nothing. He knew he had to agree. When saying goodbye to his wife, his daughter clung to his leg and cried nonstop. Pete stroked his daughter's head and said he would be back soon. He had been an investigator for many years, and his greatest strength was his sharp eye. He could spot clues from tiny details, giving him a better chance of survival than others. He was well aware of this. Early the next morning, Pete and the virus expert boarded a transport plane, which took off from the command ship's deck and flew to South Korea. They arrived in South Korea at night. The captain shouted over the intercom that there was no response from the airport traffic control, and the ground was completely dark. When the cabin door was opened, cold wind mixed with the smell of blood rushed in. The two stood on the gangway waiting for the pickup team, and the team leader even handed a gun to the expert. But they had barely taken 2 steps down the gangway when several zombies rushed out of the darkness, baring their teeth and pouncing toward them. The expert was stunned by fear. He turned around and ran back toward the cabin, but slipped and fell to the ground. The fall caused the gun in his hand to go off accidentally, shooting the expert in the head. Pete was completely dumbfounded. Just then, the pickup special forces finally arrived. The team leader led his men, guns in hand, and cleared out the zombies. Pete didn't dare to linger. He followed the team and rushed to the base. Once at the base, Pete told the team leader that the expert had died. The team leader froze for a long time, unable to process the news. After a while, he sighed and said, "We're already here, we have to keep the mission going." As the team leader loaded bullets into his gun, he told Pete about the zombies' characteristics. These things find people by sound. Shooting them in the body won't kill them. You have to shoot them in the head to take them down. Later, he took Pete to a room that had been burned to ashes. There was a charred corpse on the bed. The team leader said, "This is the first person infected in South Korea, and the one next to him is the colonel he bit. When we were investigating the soldier's cause of death, he suddenly came back to life, rolled his eyes and bit the person next to him. That's how the disaster started. But we can't confirm if he was the first infected person in the world. Besides, the body's been burned to ashes. There's no way to continue tracing clues." As they talked, Pete saw a soldier walking by, clutching his foot and limping, with mud still on his trouser legs. The team leader explained, "This guy's lucky. Last time he was surrounded by 7 or 8 zombies, but he wasn't caught or bitten. Everyone jokes that he's got dumb luck." Pete didn't respond, but he thought to himself, How could that be a coincidence? Zombies wouldn't just let someone go for no reason. Later, when Pete was wandering around the base's detention area, he saw a man locked in an iron cage. His hair was as messy as a bird's nest, and he was muttering to himself. The guarding soldier said, "This guy used to work for the CIA. He was arrested for secretly selling weapons to South Korea." Pete felt there was something off about this man. His intuition told him the man must know something, so he handed him a bottle of water and tried to talk to him. After drinking the water, the man's eyes lit up a little. He leaned closer to the cage and said, "Right now, Israel is the only safe place in the world. Their leaders received news in advance, and built a 100-meter high wall overnight. Zombies can't climb it." Whether the news was true or not, it was the only lead they had. Pete had to check it out. The plane took off in the night rain. The next day, Pete called his wife to report that he was safe. But before they could chat for long, a mushroom cloud suddenly rose from the ground. The electromagnetic pulse from the nuclear explosion disrupted the phone signal. Pete's mood became heavy. After flying for a long time more, they reached the sky above Jerusalem. Unlike the previous places, the air traffic control here responded quickly. The ground airport was lit up. Planes took off and landed in an orderly manner, and even the staff were going about their work as usual. It didn't look like a place that had encountered a crisis. Pete told the captain to wait in the plane, and take off immediately if there was any trouble, then got off the plane to meet Israel's person in charge. Upon asking, he found out that they had intercepted an encrypted document from an Indian general some time ago. The document mentioned that zombie-like infected people would attack living beings and spread the infection. Although no one believed it at first, they still built defensive walls in advance, and unexpectedly, they really came in handy. You led Pete toward the city entrance, muttering as they walked, "No one knows for sure if patient zero came from India. Some people say it was caused by black market organ trafficking. There are so many theories about where the source came from, but no one knows for sure. All we can do now is investigate as hard as we can." As he spoke, they reached the entrance. You pointed at the two large gates. These are Jerusalem's gates of redemption, 2 of the 10 defensive gates, specially guarding Israel's safe zone. We're still letting people from outside in. Saving one more living person means one fewer zombie we have to fight. The two sides of the wall were like two different worlds. The people who had just been rescued into the city sang gratefully to express their thanks, but the loudspeakers broadcast both the static and the singing together, and this stimulated the zombies outside. A horde of zombies rushed toward the high wall like maniacs. Pete was anxious. There was no time to waste, and he needed a clear answer. But you shrugged and said, "What answer?" "All we can do now is find a place to hide." Pete looked at the restless crowd around him and realized how noisy it was. But before Pete could finish speaking, zombies had already climbed to the top of the wall. The crazily swarming zombies threw the scene into chaos in an instant. He quickly told his men to send Pete to the airport. Outside, helicopters mounted with Gatling guns fired wildly at the zombies attacking the wall. But even the densest firepower was far from enough against so many zombies. As he ran, Pete glanced back casually. He saw an old man standing there in a daze, but strangely, the surrounding zombies didn't attack him. At this moment, zombies poured in like a tide. The city entrance had been breached, and there was no way to take care of anyone else. Pete could only keep running forward. He had just reached a corner when a soldier was dragged up by zombies. The soldier was ruthless. Figuring he was going to die anyway, he pulled the pin on a grenade and died together with the zombies. The helicopter pilot here was already preparing to take off, but Pete and his group ran into another wave of zombies. While moving, Pete saw another strange sight. A child who looked sick was unharmed even in the middle of a horde of zombies. This further confirmed Pete's suspicion, but there was no time to verify it now. Facing the pouncing zombies, the soldier beside him couldn't hold on any longer and threw a grenade. Seeing it didn't kill all the zombies, he threw another one. After the explosion, the female soldier raised her gun to check the surroundings. Suddenly, a zombie jumped out from nowhere and bit her hand. After shooting the zombie dead, the female soldier was stunned. Pete reacted extremely quickly. He pulled out a long knife from a nearby corpse and cut off the female soldier's hand in one strike. Then he bandaged her wound while counting the time. Fortunately, cutting off the hand worked. The virus didn't spread to the rest of her body. Then the group ran out of the cave to evacuate by helicopter, but the zombies outside surrounded them, giving them no chance to escape. The pilot at the airport heard that the pickup helicopter had crashed, so he took off on his own without waiting for them. When Pete arrived at the airport, their plane was already long gone. The group had to stop a passenger plane that was about to take off. The captain saw them holding guns and had to lower the ladder. In the end, only Pete and the injured female soldier Lily climbed up. The plane was already full of refugees. Pete looked out the window. The once only safe city had now fallen too. On the way, he rebandaged Lily's wound, and remembered the child and the soldier he had seen earlier. Realizing that being sick might be a form of immune protection, he quickly took out his phone and called Terry, telling Terry to ask the captain to change the destination to the WHO. It was the closest place to them where they could conduct experiments. After negotiating with the captain, the plane turned around and flew toward Wales. Before long, a dog suddenly ran off on its own to the bathroom door at the tail of the plane, and barked non-stop. Pete, who was woken up, felt flustered. He moved over and pulled back the curtain, only to see the back of the plane was in complete chaos. Several people had already turned into zombies, and were biting other passengers. Pete quickly told everyone to stay quiet, and move their luggage to block the aisle, but while moving, a suitcase fell to the ground with a loud bang. This attracted the zombies from behind. The entire plane instantly became a living hell. Pete was busy dealing with the pouncing zombies, when Lily took out her pistol to help him out, but with only a few bullets, they could only hold on a little longer. At this moment, Pete noticed the grenade at Lily's waist. Seeing that almost all the passengers had been bitten, he didn't hesitate any longer. He pulled the pin and threw it. A zombie fell into the right engine. The plane immediately veered to the right, and with insufficient power, it was about to crash. Pete quickly secured Lily in her seat, then pulled his own seatbelt tight. Whether they lived or died now depended on fate. Pete didn't know how long he was unconscious before he woke up in his seat. Lily, who had been beside him, was already gone. Looking up, he saw broken pieces of the plane everywhere. A sharp object had pierced his stomach, making him grimace in pain. He gritted his teeth and unbuckled his seatbelt, falling directly to the ground. Behind him, a zombie that wasn't dead yet was groaning. Pete didn't even have the energy to complain. He struggled to get up and just then saw Lily coming back. The two supported each other and walked to the door of the WHO. Just as Lily reached out to ring the doorbell, Pete couldn't hold on any longer and collapsed to the ground. On the other side, after the people on the command ship learned that the plane had crashed and Pete was out of contact, they planned to send his family from the ship to a refugee camp. Terry tried to delay as much as possible, but there was no room for mercy in the face of disaster. In the end, the family still boarded the plane, and was forced to leave the command ship. Pete woke up from a nightmare to find himself lying in a hospital bed. The object that had pierced his stomach had been removed, and the wound had been bandaged. Two people in white coats came over, and asked him who he was and what he was doing there. Pete told them to use his phone to call Terry. Terry was shocked to hear Pete was still alive when he answered the call, and quickly proved to the two that Pete was a UN staff member. He also told Pete about his family being sent away. By the way, Pete felt a heavy weight in his chest, but there was nothing he could do. Now, the best way to save his family was to find a way to deal with the zombies here. When they got to the laboratory, Pete shared his idea. He had seen a child undergoing chemotherapy, and a soldier with a foot injury, who were not attacked by zombies. He guessed these monsters didn't attack people with physical illnesses, such as cancer or the flu, but to prove this, they needed to get pathogens from Building B. However, Building B had long been occupied by zombies. There were at least 80 of them inside. Pete and the other two put together some simple protective gear and prepared to break in. They moved the obstacles blocking the passage, then walked forward cautiously, not daring to breathe heavily for fear of alerting the zombies. But when they got near the laboratory, the ground was covered with broken glass. Stepping on it made a harsh squeaking sound, and the surrounding zombies immediately reacted. Fortunately, not all of them pounced. Soon, the three had to pass by a laboratory where a zombie was circling non-stop. Taking advantage of the moment the zombie turned to the blind spot, they lowered their heads and crawled past one after another. But they had barely crawled a few steps when they ran into a zombie head-on. They tried to open the door to take the corridor, but the sound of opening the door roused the entire horde of zombies. They had just turned around the corridor when they encountered another zombie. Pete told the other two to leave first through the other side. The male companion accidentally knocked into a cabinet while running. The sound roused the previous zombie, but Lily raised her gun and shot it down. This completely stirred up a hornet's nest. All the zombies came chasing after them. Pete quickly told the other two to go find the virus, while he picked up a crowbar, knocked it against objects as he ran, and tried to draw all the zombies to his side. After being chased for a long time, Pete finally took down one zombie, but the wound in his stomach began to throb with excruciating pain. Before he could get up, another zombie came charging from the end of the corridor. Pete quickly pulled out the crowbar embedded in the zombie's skull, and killed the onrushing zombie in the last second. Meanwhile, Lily and the other companion had just reached the door of the virus storage room. When they saw a horde of zombies gathered at the door, they didn't say a word and turned to run. In the end, they were forced to go back the same way they came. Lily shot her way forward in the front, but a clip of bullets only took down 2 or 3 zombies, and the ones behind were still chasing. The person waiting to meet them hurried toward the passage, shouting hurry up as they ran. Since most of the zombies had been lured to the corridor, Pete entered the virus storage laboratory without difficulty. Seeing the virus tubes on the shelf, he put them into an iron box one by one. Just as he was about to head back, a zombie blocked the door. Pete could barely handle one zombie, but if he lured others over, he would die here. After hesitating for no more than 2 seconds, Pete had to use himself as an experimental subject. He didn't know which virus in his hand would work, and these viruses themselves were harmful to the body, but he had no other options now. He wrote a note saying, "Tell my wife and daughters I love them for me," then used a syringe to draw one type of virus and injected it into his arm. After the injection, he faced off against the zombie at the door. He had to wait for the virus to take effect. He didn't know how much time had passed when Pete decided it was probably enough. He picked up the iron box and pushed the door open. The zombie really didn't attack him. To zombies, living people who were sick were like invisible beings. In the end, Pete walked to a vending machine, opened a can of cola for himself to calm down, then opened the machine's delivery chute. Countless cans of cola made a huge noise. When the zombies in the corridor heard it, they swarmed over, but all of them brushed past Pete without noticing him. The others opened the door to greet Pete and then injected him with the antidote. Thanks to Pete's discovery, humanity had a temporary way to deal with this world-destroying disaster. Humans produced a large number of vaccines and launched operations to wipe out zombies. Hundreds of millions of zombie corpses were piled up and burned. Although this didn't completely cure the infection, it at least bought humanity some time, and Pete also brought his family back from the refugee camp. This is where the movie ends. World War Z breaks out of the locked room escape formula of traditional zombie movies, and uses a global disaster perspective to highlight a sense of realism. It doesn't portray zombies as bizarre monsters, nor does it turn the protagonist into a superhuman. Instead, it uses the crisis to reflect humanity's fragility and resilience. The core of the film is deheroization. The protagonist Jerry is just a former UN investigator. When facing the zombie horde, his first choice is to protect his family and escape. Later, he participates in the search for an antidote also to ensure his family's safety. During the process, he feels fear, makes mistakes, and relies on compromises and luck. This setting of acting to protect others fits the state of ordinary people in reality. We seek stability on usual days, but only take on responsibilities beyond our capabilities when we have to protect our loved ones in critical moments. The zombie setting hides a real-life metaphor. They are not scattered monsters, but a collective threat that spreads like a virus. Scenes of cities falling and national borders becoming ineffective are similar to public crises in the era of globalization. There are no absolute safe zones in the face of disaster, and the fates of individuals and countries are intertwined. The ways countries respond are also realistic. Some seal their borders to protect themselves, while others try to cooperate. This aligns with the diverse choices in real-life responses to common challenges, reducing the absurdity of the disaster. The action scenes abandon flashy techniques. All scenes focus on survival details without exaggerated special effects. The sense of tension comes from the real pressure of possible death in the next second, holding one's breath to avoid making noise, taking risks to turn back and save a companion, and gritting one's teeth to persist in order to race against time. These details take the scenes beyond the thrill of fighting monsters, and make them more like the helplessness and desperate efforts in real-life sudden crises. The ending only achieves a phased victory of temporarily easing the crisis. Jerry returns to his family, and the world is still struggling to recover. This setting is close to reality. There are few one-and-for-all solutions to life's problems. Most of the time, we find a way forward in difficulties, protect the people around us, and hold on to hope. It is a masterpiece well worth watching. This video ends here. If you enjoyed my video, please subscribe to the channel. See you next time.